Welcome, dear friends. Today we'll take up fourth to eighth stanzas of Keats's Ode to a Nightingale. I am Dr. Durbadal Datta, an English teacher and ELT counselor. So let us begin with where we ended in our last class, that is third stanza. There we find contrast between the world of mankind and the world of the nightingale. They stand over against each other. The listener is in the human world and he responds to the song of the nightingale. He is caught up into reverie and now he yearns to find his way into the world in which the bird sings of summer in full-throated ease. What the world of the nightingale means to the listener, that is the poet, is conveyed in the great part through the imagery of the poem. It is a world of richness and vitality, of deep sensuousness, of natural beauty and fertility. But it is not grossly sensuous. It appeals to the imagination and has its own ideality. So let us begin the fourth stanza. The poet says, "Away, away, for I will fly to thee, not charioted by Bacchus and his parts." Earlier, the poet desired to fly into the world of the nightingale with the help of wine. Bacchus, you know, is the Roman god of wine, and Bacchus rides chariot pulled by leopard. Now he rejects the idea of being aided by wine. So she says, "I will fly to thee," that is you, nightingale, "not charioted by Bacchus and his parts." But how will the poet fly into the world of the nightingale? Reading, "But on the viewless wings of poesy." But the poet depends on, as a poet, he depends on viewless wings of poesy. Poesy means imagination. He has the poetic imagination that will help him to fly into the world of the nightingale. This is his desire, but there are barriers, though the dull brain perplexes and retards. That is, his dull brain hinders his flight of imagination. This is true. Very often happens. We live in a world of reason, we live in a world of intellect, we live in a world of sorrow, and it is always with us. So it hinders. Now the poet has been transported to the world of the nightingale. So he says, "Already with thee, already with you, I have already with you, nightingale. Tender is the night. Night has not passed. There is much left to be passed. And happily the queen moon is on her throne." Happily means perhaps. Perhaps the queen moon is there on her throne. And around the queen moon, who are there? Clustered around by all her starry face. That is, fairies or stars are there around the moon. But here there is no light. In this world, there is darkness, there is no light. World of the nightingale. Save means except. Save what from heaven, what from the sky, is with the breezes blown through verdurous glooms and winding mossy ways. Think of the imagery used here. Whenever the wind blows, breezes, soft wind of summer blows, what happens? The leaves are shaken and it creates a passage for the light to pass into the gloomy or dark forest. There is an important word, bhaduras, gloom. Bhaduras, that is green. And winding mossy ways, the light is passing through the way, and the way is a zigzag path. The way is zigzag and mossy. It's a compound mossy way that is covered with moss. So now come to the fifth stanza. So poet is in darkness already with the nightingale. So he says, I cannot see what flowers are at my feet. So there are many flowers that he can feel, he can perceive, but he cannot see. Nor what soft incense hangs upon the boughs. So what incense, what fragrance is there that he cannot see or he cannot understand clearly, but there is a part, and that is important. In embalmed darkness gaze each sweet, wherewith the seasonable months endows. The seasonable month, that is May, that is summer. It has endowed nature with its flowers and fruits, green leaves. So he can gaze. Embalmed darkness, that is darkness, is sweet smelling. And there he can gaze each flower, the grass, the thicket, and the fruit tree wild, white hawthorn, and the pastoral eglantine, he can identify through their smell. Fast fading violets covered up in leaves, and mid-May's eldest child, the coming musk rose, he calls musk rose, mid-May's eldest child, that is, the flower blooms fast in the season, and it is full of dewy wine. The murmurous haunt of flies on summer eves. Haunt means habitat or a place to be visited. And as there is musk rose and it is full of wine, flies and bees murmur there. In the evening, notice the last line is onomatopoeic. There is onomatopoeia, that is sound represents the sense. Now come to the sixth stanza. While the poet is listening to the song, what does he think about the song? Darkling I listen, oh, in the dark I listen, and for many a time I have been half in love with wistful death. So, in an ecstatic moment of joy, the poet thinks death would have been better. Called him soft names in many amused rhymes, in poetic language, in verse, he has invoked or addressed death. To what is his address, invocation? To take into the air my quiet breath. To take into the air his quiet breath. That is, he expects death. Now more than ever seems it rich to die. Very, very interesting language. Rich to die. Rich means here precious or pleasant. The poet thinks this is the happiest moment and this is the most precious moment to die. To seize upon the midnight with no pain. He will die. He would seize upon the midnight and it would be a painless death. While thou art pouring forth thy soul abroad in such an ecstasy, the bird is singing in such an ecstasy, and in this moment the poet would like to die. And when he would die, what would happen? Still wouldest thou sing. When the poet would die, the bird would be singing. And I have ears in vain. At that moment, the poet's hearing would stop. His ear would be in vain. And what would happen? To die high requiem, the funeral song, the same song which is expression of exuberant joy becomes high requiem. That is, in the musical setting, it becomes the funeral song. And by this time, the poet becomes a sod. Sod means a part of the earth, unfeeling earth. Sorry. Come to the 7th stanza. The poet here claims that the bird is not born for death. Poet says, "Thou wast not born for death, immortal bird." Very important line. Actually, the poet thinks that the bird will not die because Nightingale lacks the human consciousness that individualizes human beings. We become individual entity because of our self-consciousness, and the poet thinks it is a source of joy forever. So a species of nightingale may die, but nightingale would never die, and its song would never die. It is everlasting. No hungry generations trade thee down. So no hungry generation can trade or destroy the race of nightingale. The voice I hear this passing night was heard in ancient days by emperor and crowns. The same voice that the poet now hears was heard by emperor and crown in the past. Clown may be ordinary uneducated person or peasant. Perhaps the same song that found a path through the sad heart of Ruth when sick for home. She stood in tears amid the alien corn. You know, here is a reference to the biblical story of Ruth. Ruth was actually, in Bible, Ruth was driven into exile, and she was all alone working in a field while homesick. The same song of the nightingale, it consoled Ruth and made him homesick. The same that oft times hath charmed magic casements opening on the foam of perilous seas in fairy lands forlorn. Here you have to think of the poem or the poetic exploration in terms of medieval romance. The poet thinks of an enchanted castle surrounded by stormy sea, and there is a maiden who is there, and she is listening to the song of the nightingale, and the poet calls in fairy lands forlorn. That is, in a distant or remote land, a land of fairy tale, now deserted by people, as in Ode on a Grecian Urn. It is a magical world that you find. Now come to the final stanza. There is a word forlorn, remote, alone, neglected, whatever may be the meaning, you understand here. Forlorn, the very word is like a bell. There is human consciousness. The imaginary flight is almost over. The poet now thinks, the word forlorn reminds the poet that he is a human being. So the word is like a bell. It sounds to toll me back from thee to my soul self. It calls him back. It calls the poet back to his own self. And human consciousness now comes back. His self-consciousness comes back, and he says, adieu, farewell. The fancy cannot sit so well. Imagination cannot keep the illusion. of the nightingale's dreamy world. So fancy cannot cheat so well. The poet is deluded by fancy, as she is famed to do, deceiving elf. She calls imagination or fancy is known for cheating, and he calls it a deceiving elf, that is a deceiving fairy. You can remember the poem Love Redemption's Mercy by John Keats. There is also the same fairy. Adieu, adieu, thy plaintive anthem fades. So look at this line particularly. He bids farewell, and the same song of ecstatic joy, now becomes plaintive anthem, that is melancholy song. Past the near meadows, over the still stream, the nightingale now flies away. Past the near meadows, over the still stream, up the hillside, and now it is buried deep. Now it vanishes, the sound, the bird flies away, the sound also goes away. In the next valley glades, in the next valley, in the open space, so the valley also, the rock or the hill that is there, it diverts the song to come to the poet. Now the poet is left alone. He says, was it a vision or a waking dream? The poet comes back to reality from the region of poetic fancy, and he thinks, was it a vision or a waking dream? Played is that music, gone is that music. Do I wake or sleep? Here also, the poet is left alone like the night in Keats's Love Redemption's Mercy. And he thinks that he is being cheated by fancy or imagination. That's all about the second part of the reading of the text. And in the next class, we will take up some key takeaways and important points. Thank you very much.